He argues the alleged bribes involved sums trivial to a billionaire.
Ma io mi domando, se ci fosse stato davvero bisogno di dare qualche centinaio di miliardi a qualcuno, il signor Berlusconi aveva bisogno di falsificare i bilanci delle sue società, faceva semplicemente un cenno alla cassa personale dove non ci sono vincoli di contabilità e dove poteva prelevare non centinaia di milioni, ma centinaia e centinaia e centinaia e in qualche occasione anche un migliaio di volte le dazioni che erano date ai giudici.
The Prime Minister concludes by setting a date to return to court.
Qualunque cosa succeda, l'ho già detto, eccetera, io quel giorno sarò a disposizione, quel giorno anche per eccetera, io quel giorno sarò...
Vabbè, è una farsa. Il 25 sa che sarà già passato il lodo meccanico, quindi non ci sarà più nessuna udienza. E questa legge che sta approvando lo renderà al di sopra della legge, nel senso che potrà fare quello che vuole e potrà aver fatto quello che vuole e non gli succederà più nulla, non lo potranno più processare. Praticamente questo processo muore oggi, questo è il funerale del processo e credo che sia anche il funerale della giustizia italiana.
Marco Travaglio didn't have to wait long to see if his prediction came true. One day after Berlusconi's court appearance, the lower house is voting to pass the immunity bill. Berlusconi's attorneys are present to vote on the bill. The debate has dragged on all day, as more than 70 amendments are considered, a stalling tactic of the opposition. Outside, a crowd is gathering to protest the bill's passage. The demonstrators are urging the opposition to protest the immunity bill by walking out, which they later do, because it is clear that Berlusconi's governing coalition has the votes. They are singing an anti-fascist song and holding balloons that represent the constitutional rights they say will float away if the bill is passed.
È già stata approvata, dove tra un po' approveranno la legge che è stata approvata al Senato, avrà l'effetto immediato da qualche giorno per bloccare il processo in cui è coinvolto il premio.
Disposizione per l'attuazione dell'articolo 68 della Costituzione nonché in materia di processi penali.
After 8 hours of debate, the immunity bill comes to a vote.
È chiusa la votazione. Presenti 332, votato 319, secondi 13, maggioranza 160, favorevoli 302, contrari 17, la Camera approva.
The immunity bill passes. It applies to any crimes committed before or during Berlusconi's public service. The balloons, to represent equality before the law, are released into the Rome sky. In Florence, thousands more protesters took to the streets. Marco Travaglio spoke to the crowd.
Guardate che un Presidente del Consiglio sul quale non c'è più controllo dell'informazione perché è tutta sua, non c'è più il controllo del Parlamento perché è una specie di sua protesi che viene convocato e sconvocato dai suoi avvocati difensori, non c'è più il controllo delle commissioni parlamentari perché sono tutte in mano alla maggioranza. Continuate a fare manifestazioni come questa e chiamate altre persone perché la prossima sarà ancora peggio. Grazie.
Now we don't need to change the Constitution. All the rules, the appearances, the procedures can be respected. That's unnecessary because the power of television, which did not exist in Hitler's or Mussolini's time, combined to the power of radio and combined to the power of the press, you can have democracy as an empty shell. The substance is gone, or is going.
On July 1st, just 13 days after the immunity law passed, Prime Minister Berlusconi took over the rotating presidency of the European Union. At first, his charm seemed to be winning over his audience. But just 24 hours into his presidency, a German member of the European Parliament questioned his conflicts of interest and the immunity law, and the honeymoon was over.
So che in Italia c'è un produttore che sta montando un film sui campi di concentramento nazisti. La suggerirò per il ruolo di Capò. Lei è perfetto. Se questa è la forma di democrazia che intendete usare per chiudere le parole del Presidente del Consiglio europeo, sembrate turisti della democrazia, dei turisti della democrazia.
His remarks in Strasbourg were not heard on Rai's leading news program. It has been a productive summer for Silvio Berlusconi. His trial has been postponed indefinitely. He's immune from further prosecution. His media empire grows unrestricted, and his soccer team are European champions. But the questions won't go away. This month, The Economist magazine challenged Berlusconi again to defend himself against a long list of unanswered questions about his financial and political past.
Wide Angle continues with Jamie Rubin.
Alexander Stilla, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about Berlusconi's power over the TV. Directly or indirectly, he controls 90% of the TV in Italy. But if you're an Italian sitting in Italy watching television, do you get objective news? Do you learn about the truth about the Italian economy, Italian politics?
Well, to give you an idea, I mean, if this matters during election coverage, and I think we all appreciate how important that is. If you, if you watch one of Berlusconi's channels, the anchorman on one of his channels wept with joy when Berlusconi was elected on air. I've watched programs in which he's just literally insulted the political opposition, called them liars, called them enemies, called them communists, called them all sorts of things. I saw his main political adversary was given a little soundbite in which he was portrayed at a fish market talking about how to cook fish instead of talking about the political issues of the day. You know, that may seem laughable to many people, and many Italians will tell you, oh, I actually watched that for amusement. But it's not so funny if you consider that, for example, there are statistics that show that the people that watch Berlusconi's channels vote overwhelmingly for his party. You realize that control of television does translate into votes and translates into power in ways that should make, I think, everyone uneasy.
Let's talk about the specific charges of corruption and bribery that have been made against Berlusconi. Do you think the average Italian regards these charges as outrageous, or do they somehow come to expect business leaders to bribe the taxman, for example, to avoid paying taxes?
Well, I think it's true that one reason why there's been a high level of toleration for Berlusconi and his legal problems is that many Italians do skirt the law, in many cases feel they're forced to skirt the law by excessive regulation. There are something like 70,000 or 90,000 laws in Italy and only 5,000 in France or Germany.
Tax laws.
Just laws in general. Their life is very regulated. But I think that what many Italians don't know, because it hasn't been publicized, is that the kind of bribery and the kind of corner cutting that Berlusconi and his company has done is on an entirely different scale.
That's not being reported to the Italian people in detail.
It is reported, but it's, for example, never explained on TV. So that, for example, what you'll get on TV is Berlusconi or one of his lawyers saying, this is outrageous. They've invented an entire case based on no evidence. And then a journalist doesn't intervene and say, actually, the evidence is this. And there are two ways of looking at this case. You only get, he's been accused of bribing a judge, a contradiction of that charge by saying it's invented, and no independent analysis of what the facts are.
Do you regard the newspapers, as opposed to the television, as free in Italy? And haven't they been some of the primary critics of Berlusconi?
Well, they have, but it's interesting. Berlusconi doesn't much worry about newspapers that are, or magazines that are sort of clearly on the left. He knows that their readers will never vote for him. Where Berlusconi has dedicated his attention, are in